Hello, 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 and welcome. My name is Amelia Larson. I serve as the Executive Vice President of Innovations and Academic Partnerships at American Reading Company. Thank you for joining us for this really exciting session. First, a little bit of housekeeping. We will be recording today's session. You will receive an email with a link to the recording along with information regarding our upcoming webinars. During our time together today, please make sure you submit your comments and questions in the chat box. Shadana Gunn and I will be monitoring the chat, and we will leave time for some Q&A. And if you are on social media, remember to use the hashtag ArtLoves as you share your learning and contribute to the learning of others. I will now pass it on to Megan Maloney, our Chief Academic Officer. Megan?
Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. As you join today, please put in the chat box also where you're joining us from across the country, possibly across the world. We like to see where our attendees are coming from. As Amelia said, I am the Chief Academic Officer at American Reading Company, and I'm excited for our second Voices of the Field webinar. This month, we're going to be hearing from school administrators around their implementation of a high-quality curriculum. And I'm also honored to be co-facilitating with Dr. Irvin Scott. Dr. Scott is currently at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, but formerly he was in the districts of Lancaster through Boston Public Schools and at the Gates Foundation. Dr. Scott is also the father of a Super Bowl champion from the LA Rams, as well as two other amazing sons that he has. So welcome, everyone. We will now hear from our panelist and then Dr. Scott. Dr. Davis.
Hi, I'm Tina Davis. I work at Greenfield Elementary School, which is located in the Saratoga Springs City School District. Our area of focus for ARC this year was kindergarten through second grade. We're in our first year of implementation. Next year, we're looking forward to implementing the third through fifth grades. And my most surprising thing about ARC, well, it's hard to narrow it down to just one thing. The first thing, I guess, would be the amount of time children have books in their hands. Student writing growth has just kind of knocked our socks off. And then just unsolicited comments from parents about how much they're noticing their children are engaged in reading.
Hi, I'm Fonda Lewis, and I'm principal at a 4-year-old kindergarten through third grade school here in Beloit, Wisconsin. And we are in our first year of implementation of ARC for our kindergarten through third grade. And I think the thing that surprised me the most is I did not expect our reading culture, the culture of our building to change so quickly in a positive direction around reading and writing. And I think it goes along with what Tina was saying. I have never, ever had so many kids wanting to come to my office and share their writing with me, both, informational and fictional. So it's been very exciting to see how our whole building is kind of coming around the literacy topics.
Hi, I'm Barbara Miklas. I'm an assistant principal at Allen Fair Elementary in Cesar Rodney School District in Dover, Delaware. We are in our third year of implementation for third through fifth grade, and we are piloting in first and second in our Chinese immersion program on the English side. So that's been really a cool experience. I think what was most surprising for us when we first started was our historically underachieving students' perception of reading changed almost immediately, and how the choice in the apprenticeship model really engaged them in a way I had never seen before. And the ERLA really did make a difference in meeting their needs and reaching the students.
Hi, I'm Kristen Simpkins. I'm the principal of Ardmore Elementary School in District 45. We're in our first year of implementation, and we're rolling it out with our kindergarten through fifth grade. I would echo the sentiments of the rest of the panel. It's that reading books in hands, kind of that sentiment that our kids have come alive as readers and they've actually identified themselves as readers rather than reading as something that they do. I would also add to that, I was surprised, and I think we all were, by the depth of this program and kind of like the complexity of availability of resources and supports for our teachers and our students.
Thank you all. And Dr. Scott.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megan. And thank you, Tina, Fonda, Barbara, Kristen. So excited about this conversation and really, really looking forward to it. And appreciate you making just those points you've made about some of the things that were sort of a surprise to you, some of the things that you're really excited about as it relates to the implementation of this curricula. I'm excited to be here, former principal, district leader, and I always love having the opportunity, especially now that I spend most of my time training leaders. I love to have the opportunity to actually engage with leaders who are on the ground doing the work on a day-to-day basis. And so we honor you, we celebrate you, and we thank you for taking this time to have this conversation, this honest conversation about a critical part of school leadership, which is how do we implement curricula with fidelity and in a way that leads to impact in school. So let's start with a really important question that some people might be grappling with. And that is a question of why. Like, what prompted you to even move in this direction? Because we probably have some people who are out there who are trying to decide, should we go with ARC? Should we go with someone else? What does ARC have that others don't have? So what was the driver we'll start with Kristen and we'll sort of work our way back for you guys moving in this direction, Kristen?
I think the selection process really had a main driver of equity. And when digging into that conceptually, it was around the notion of equitable access to challenging curriculum and equitable access to supports each student needs to reach that highest level of potential. And I think that was a tipping point, and reaching towards ARC versus another company was that's kind of baked in to what ARC's about. And I would suggest that was a main driver of what led us forward with, ARC as our selection.
Thank you. Thank you. So some kids not achieving at the level that you'd hoped, and you needed something to help sort of accelerate closing that gap. Thank you. Barbara, why don't you take it up? What was the driver there at Cesar Rodney and the district maybe?
Well, for the district, it was similar. We were working with curriculum materials that teachers had created based on Common Core standards. And we were really looking for curriculum materials, not necessarily a program or a basal reader. And then from a district standpoint, it was all green rated. And we were able to visit a sister school at Cape Henlopen and see it in action. And we saw just what you were talking about, Kristen, those equitable practices, the conferencing schedules and meeting the needs of the students at varying levels. The range of genres was huge. I'd never seen such a range. And then the multiple perspectives and cultures that were reflected in the book selected. I really think that was a big part of it. And then, of course, I think the choice and the apprenticeship model led to its hand into seeing something in a unique and different way for kids to take that opportunity to own their own learning and feel empowered in their learning. And we had never seen anything like that before. So I believe that's what took my heart and maybe a little bit of the heart of the district.
Wonderful. Thank you, Barbara. You mentioned a word that I want to make sure I clarify, just in case others need clarification around. I know what it means. When you say green rated, just say a little more about what you mean in case people are not familiar with what you're saying there.
It's just the highest rating you can receive in literacy program. When we looked at a lot of different programs, and some of them were green rated in certain areas, but this was across the board. So it was definitely achieving everything that we needed it to achieve to be a well-rounded literacy approach and, a little bit different for us too. So.
Great. Thank you. I also heard you talk about looking at other districts, being able to go there and actually see and hear what other teachers were saying about the materials. And then students being reflected in the materials also was another point I heard. Great, thank you. Fonda.
Yeah, our why was a big one. Our community is, and our school is majority low socioeconomic, and we have a beautiful, diverse community, and our students were not achieving. And unfortunately, in our school, it was almost like the literacy coach I work with so closely. She's awesome. And it was like our triangle was backwards. Most of our kids were not proficient, and then some were. So the exciting thing is we are already on target. So this is our first year of implementation, and we still have a few months to go. But like for kindergarten, for example, the triangle is already flipped. So now most are at or above, and we have, of course, a few that we're still working with. But that was the why, and we want an equitable instruction for everyone. I think that it shouldn't matter where you live. You should be, getting the best instruction possible. And our staff is amazing. Our teachers are outstanding. Before they were working so hard, but they weren't seeing the effort. They weren't seeing the effort because the achievement was still not working. And they were kind of reaching for resources or having resources that really weren't thorough. So this arc has really pointed us, like I said, in an exciting way, in a positive direction.
Wonderful. Another focus on equity being a really important target. Beautifully diverse. I like that language around things. I have a colleague, you talked about sort of where the students are should not determine where they're going to go. I have a colleague at the school who says demography should not determine destiny. And I love the way you're connecting these materials to creating an opportunity for students to achieve at high levels, no matter who they are. Thank you, Fonda. Tina, same question, the why, the driver.
Sure. So in art, I come from a district where we have 6 different elementary schools, and we had 2 different ELA programs operating in each elementary building. We had a K-2 program and then a 3-5 program. We noticed that there was a disconnect from one program to the next. But we also noticed that there was inconsistencies across buildings. So we really wanted to come together as a district and make a decision on a program that everyone could buy into and use with our children. The programs that we were using were lacking in a few things. Differentiation, the ability to differentiate and meet the needs of all of our learners was definitely one that definitely one area that was driving the need for a new program. The other one was writing. It was really hard. It's really hard, I think, to find a program that has everything. And what we knew going into this is that we wanted a program that had a strong focus on writing. And we had a committee of folks that investigated all the programs, and our committee went to one of the ARC schools and visited. And then we had a second program that we were looking at the same time and visited that school as well. Probably the biggest takeaway from that visit was the excitement in the ARC school. The teachers there could not say enough good things about ARC. And our teachers walked away with this feeling of awe because they saw what the children were doing. They saw the children's reading engagement and they saw their writing. So I guess it was the overall feel, right? The aura that came from the school that was using ARC.
Very nice. Thank you, Tina. I think one of the key drivers, if I heard it correctly, was inconsistency in terms of curriculum, right? Which is a really, really important point when it comes to the diversity of learners, right? People talk about inconsistency in terms of performance, but we're giving students all different types of curricula, all different types of instructional strategies. Is it not surprising that we have inconsistency around performance? And so trying to create some system and structure around consistency with curriculum was a key driver. And then I heard this also in the opening, which is something that I love as a former English teacher, high school English teacher, and that is the focus on writing. Absolutely critical. Focus on writing came out in what Tina was sharing. Anyone want to add anything or build on what anyone has said based on before I pivot to another question? Because what I want to do is talk a little bit about buy-in. Okay, so now you're excited. One of the things that I heard is we took teachers, right? We took probably teacher leads. We took teachers. We gave them opportunities to experience curriculum in other places. But how do you actually get buy-in, not only with those teachers who went and saw? I'm assuming you didn't take the entire school, but how do you get a buy-in from the entire school perspective? Who wants to start that question? This question of buy-in.
I can start.
Go right ahead, Fonda. Thank you.
Yeah.
Then we'll go to you, Barbara, next.
I think a critical piece of buy-in is the idea of engagement versus compliance. And part of, I believe, something that was very successful for myself was getting in early. So being a part of the pilot conversation. So we piloted first, and having our lead teachers, like you just referenced, be a part of that pilot also. Because then when they are starting to talk about the amazing things their kids are doing and other teachers are walking through their classrooms, it spreads like wildfire. So it's kind of like with students, right? We want them to be engaged in their reading, not just reading because I told them to sit down and read. Same with teachers, because they want to do well too. They want to see those rewards. And, our incredible staff use the resources and they're seeing the results. So I think the buy-in is created through that kind of culture of, hey, we're in this together and we're going to move forward, but let's see how we can help each other and, keep moving.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more, Fonda. I think when we first started our 3rd through 5th grade, we were in that moment of, okay, how is this going to go? And then it started to spread. And our 1st and 2nd grade teachers wanted to hear all about it. They wanted to come see it. But I think the other thing that's really unique about ARC is you can customize the units to really meet the needs of the school district or the state, depending on, how your standards are laid out. And so you can look at the social studies and science and really customize those units. And we brought the teachers in. Our director and supervisor of instruction brought the teachers in those discussions. So they felt that they had a seat at the table to discuss. And they also recognize how oftentimes social studies and science can be pushed to the side. And that if we integrate within literacy, it's only going to support their teaching and the students' learning. So I think that was a big part of the buy-in. We brought them to the table and everybody's voice was heard.
Thank you, Barbara. Kristen?
I would have to add, there's also this whole concept of the pace of learning for the adult learner in this. And I think one thing we had to be really careful of that really just was a surprise for me was the depth of what's available in ARC and making sure that we really had a design to our thinking about what are we going to ask teachers to learn? What's a purpose of that learning? Because if that work becomes for someone else, it doesn't translate into outcomes for kids. It has to be born of the need of the educator and designed to get them information that helps guide them in their instruction. So we tried to be very organic around and intentional around what were we not going to do quickly and what were we going to mostly just do for a while. And that for us, I think has been a critical focus. I'm a doer, and I think most really people who embrace the idea of change are, and the most important thing we could do to keep buy-in going through implementation, because the idea of something is great. It's in the doing that you can lose it. And I think that's where we really need to hold true and firm to like a safe pace for the adult learning.
We had this sounds extraordinary, but it was about a 3-year process to get and land on ARC. And I have to give credit to our district leaders, and one in particular who led the curriculum renewal committee. In being a larger district with 6 different elementary schools, to get all 6 schools to buy in and want the program is something that takes time, and they appreciated that time and gave that time to the committee and to the teachers. So they first audited all the staff in all 6 elementary schools and said, what do you need? What does our ELA program need? What do you want in the ELA program? And then they broke all of the answers down and created guideposts for what the staff throughout all 6 buildings were looking for in a new program. Then they actually trained the committee and building a mission and coming up with a tool to evaluate programs. And then they went through the process of evaluating, narrowing it down, etc. I think why this was so successful was because the committee it was made up of stakeholders from across the district, and they were coming back to the buildings and they were giving all the teachers constant input. This is what we talked about. This is where we're going. This is what we're thinking. This is what we heard. And it was as if when the decision was finally made, that we all knew what was coming. Even if we weren't on the committee, we all knew that, it was narrowed. By the time it got down to the ARC decision, it wasn't really a surprise to anyone. And we were able to trust that the decision was one that incorporated everyone's voice. And once our decision was made, it was, and I know in my building, I'm in one of the 6 buildings, my folks just jumped in. There wasn't questions. Of course, we had maybe some questions about how this works and what are we going to do, but it was, let's jump in. And they literally they were unpacking the boxes in the summer, trying to get their hands on the materials. And I give it credit to not only our district administrator, but the committee members for just being really on top of communicating to the rest of the members in the building.
Tina, you're actually setting us up really nicely for the next set of questions around how you go about doing this. Before we go there real quick, I want to just get one stakeholder. Kristen, you mentioned several stakeholders. Anyone want to say anything about parents? How did you bring them in, or how are you bringing them in? Or what are some of the ways to think about bringing them in? Who wants to start that? Go ahead, Fonda.
So our families were introduced to the blue book bags, and we call them bandit book bags because we're the Gaston Bandits, at conferences. And they were introduced to the skills cards, and we created an excitement about it. So on the first day that everyone got their blue bandit bag to go home and read, everyone was coming out of the school with it and so excited. So we made it like a big celebration. It's so exciting. You get to take these awesome books home. And then when you come back, you get to shop for new ones. And I think that the students being excited about it helps the parents, right? Because then the students going home and saying, will you read this with me? Or can I read this to you? So I feel like that engages the families just really naturally. And we're having a really good, really good results with that, with the books coming back and kids being excited about it. So.
Others want to jump in on that one regarding parents, families?
I think that the 100 book challenge really does hook them. The kids are super excited. And when kids are excited, like Fonda said, the parents are excited and they want to know more. And then I think Unit 2, the research, really brings the parents in because the kids want to display and create their books and share their books. And the parents see the product, and that's huge for them because they've never really seen that. The love of what the kids are doing and being able for a child to share something that they may never have heard about. That to me was the difference maker. Unit 1, the parents are like, okay, the kids are excited about reading. And Unit 2, they saw what they've been learning and that they can showcase what they learn and that they want to share it with, their parents, with the school community. So that's really, it was an exciting opportunity for us too. The kids do the work though. We haven't had a lot of hard work when it comes to having to share this with parents because the kids have really done the heavy lifting for us.
I would say the same, Barbara. I was actually sitting here a little shameful thinking, gosh, I actually didn't give the parents much thought in this whole process, but what was the most surprising was, especially during the parent-teacher conferences, the unsolicited excitement from the families about how excited the children were. We have seen some of the best engagement that we have seen since I've been here in this building, where the reading logs are coming back. They want to get their steps in, which is a marker of how many minutes they've read. They want to get their steps in. They are those book bags are so well loved. They're like in shreds now. Like they're starting to like fall apart, and the kids just take those books home with so much pride and want to show the families what they can do. As Barbara said, I can't really say that we did a lot. It just happened quite organically.
We had a really sweet, we were presenting an update, and one of our parents said she has a neurodivergent child, and she said he came home for the first time begging her to take him to the library and book shopping at the bookstore. And her exact words were, "I've waited his whole life for this moment." So I think it's in those moments where like the kids are begging outside of school to continue to engage as readers. That's where the parent is. But I would agree, I think we can always be more strategic about the before part of implementation. But I do think like this is designed for that partnership between home and school to be alive in a 24-hour cycle. So the parents are in it alongside us.
I would just add, I think the teacher excitement flowed, obviously to students, which then flowed to families, because many of our schools are community schools. Our parents know our teachers and our teachers know our families. And because there was the teacher excitement, I think that just naturally flowed to our families as well.
Great. Excellent. Yeah, go right ahead, Fonda.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
What I was thinking about is with COVID, it really put a lot of brakes on, right, for families to come in for different reasons. And finally, we're getting to the point where we're hopeful to, we had a STEAM night, and now we're getting ready. A group is planning a literacy night. And another thing we are hoping to do that we've done in the past before COVID is bringing the family members. You can pick one, we call it learning with a loved one. Each child can bring one family member into the classroom. And so then they would be able to see the ARC in action. And I think that's going to speak like volumes for them to see the work that's even being done in kindergarten.
Of that, ARC in action. Bringing families in, being able to actually observe the instruction and see what the students are doing. That's great. Let's go a little deeper on the why, the how, I mean. So I think it was Tina who mentioned that the span of time. I think you said 3 years. And so what I'd love to do is real quick, we'll just go around. I'll start with Kristen and Barbara, then Fonda, and then Tina, if you want to give more emphasis on it. How long did it take you from beginning to end to actually start thinking about the program and then full implementation? I want to give people some span of time, concreteness. Kristen.
Well, I mean, a lot of this work happened at district committee levels going back 3 years, where they started investigating our need for a guaranteed and viable curriculum, and then siphoning that work out to various committees and leadership groups with voices, including parents, in that planning process. And then that formalized itself over the course of at least 3 years into pilot and then implementation. And I would suggest conceptually the need was identified before that. So, we knew we needed to do it. We had worked through our math implementation and then pulled in ARC. Another thing that did shift our timeline was COVID. So we were delayed in our timeline because of that interruption to in-person learning. But it's a multi-year adventure, and it really starts with committee works with chorus of voices, turning into an action plan for pilot, turning into an implementation decision and rollout. So, yeah.
Thank you. Barbara?
We had a very similar process as Kristen, and I was lucky to be on the district committee. So I was able to go and be a part of the selection process. And then, of course, I like to get ahead of things. This is who I am. If we're going to pilot, I want to be the first to pilot. I think we're probably all like that. That's why we're on here. And when we were piloting, we realized we had to take it a little bit at a time. And I think it was Kristen who said early in the webinar that you can't bite off everything at once. So our ARC representative really did help us rein ourselves back in and think about what was most important in that first unit. And the beginning implementation is really focusing on that equitable conferencing schedule and building that love for reading and the routines for reading and procedures. Because if you could do that and really, really have the teachers understand how to do that well, then everything else does fall into place. But each component, you kind of layer it in. And that's how the PD has really helped us, I think, because at first we wanted to jump in and use all of the materials and use the toolkits. And what we realized was we had to become experts at one thing before we could move to the next. So our big focus early on was the URLA and really understanding the URLA and everything it can do for you. And then, of course, the one-on-one conferencing and making sure that we built equitable schedules, which was a challenge at first. And then once we did it, we realized it's a challenge you can easily overcome with working together. But it has been a journey. We are 3 years in for our upper elementary schools, and we just passed our curriculum cabinet and are going to the board for an ARC presentation for our kindergarten through second grade. We have pilots all over the district, and our first and second grade pilot are just as exciting, if not more exciting, than our third through fifth, because those kiddos are moving and you see the results and you see the love at an early age, and you see what it's going to do for the continuity and services all the way up through the elementary school.
Thank you, Barbara. And so you're going to the board to propose full implementation across all kindergartens.
We will be K to 5 if it passes with the board, and that's next month actually at my school. So we're excited to host that. And if they have any questions, I'll be right there to help.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you. Fonda?
As was said before, it's been a multi-year process. COVID, I don't think helped, but in hindsight, I think the pace of, movement of learning was actually what we needed. And so we piloted, and then we had more pilots, and the teachers, again, who had this in their classrooms, people couldn't believe it. So I think the pace was perfect. And the art coach has been awesome, just like Barbara said, about really saying what's important, because us too, like, oh, let's try this, or we're going to do this, but really focusing on what is the foundation, right? Like what really matters, like what can you not do without? And so we've done some literacy walks, and just a fun way to like learn from each other, right? Like how do the conference schedules look? How might you do this? How might you do this? And teachers are learning from each other. And that's really helped.
Thank you. Tina, did you want to add anything? You gave a timeline. You started it off with around 3 years.
It was about 3 years. I should say that COVID did have some interrupted the process a bit. And I guess one of your questions was how, and one thing that I don't know if I emphasized enough, which I think was critical in the process, was, especially when you're in a larger district, is giving time to the folks that aren't part of the committee. I think it's a really important leadership move to keep everyone current and up to date, not just like with minutes that are going out and emails, like really having monthly conversations about where the committee is, what the progress has been, and allowing people to ask questions of the committee members. None of us have enough time for staff meetings, and it was hard to give 10 minutes to committee members, but I think that was a critical move to have our building get to the point of acceptance. And so just remember time, give the time.
Yes, thank you. Go right ahead, Megan.
I've heard a few of you mentioned working with your boards. I know, Tina, you're just talking about the communities. I'm wondering at the school administration level, what you've done to work with your boards.
For us anyway, our supervisor and our director do a lot of the communicating with the board. And then our district resource teachers. I do think that they would benefit from us presenting or sharing because we're the ones that are implementing in the schools and can really share results. However, our supervisor has done a really nice job of sharing through our humanities council and our curriculum cabinet. So we've been giving updates all throughout the pilot for the last 3 years, really, to the school community at large. So I think that's helped quite a bit.
We have a board partner. And so like our board partner comes to our building. We did a couple things. We did learning walks with our board partner so she could actually just see the joy of reading kind of alive in our classrooms. And we really just didn't prep for it. You know, I invited her. We walked around while we were in our ELA block and she could just see it and feel it with us. And then we did do a board presentation. A group of principals did to kind of clarify that. But we also had a student strategy session here at the building that our partner came to so we could get student voice around promoting and engaging kids in reading more. And so we really kind of access that partnership to bring our board members right into our classrooms and right in front of our kids as we kind of learn and grow as we go.
I love that idea. I'm going to share it.
Yeah.
I think my supervisor is
really
actually on
fun.
here.
It was really fun. Yeah.
I was going to say, give us 20 seconds on the board partner structure. What does that actually look like, real quick?
Well,
I'm assuming every school has one.
I don't know. My old districts did not, but this one does. And I've had 2 different partners in my time here, and we have the discretion to choose opportunities to engage our partners at our building level. So there's no prescribed, you must do this event with your partners. So we typically engage around literacy and reading. And then, like I said, I always invite our partners in for a student strategy session so they get in it with our kids and they can really engage in their opinions and their voices. But then also that partnership allows them to come for more school-wide celebrations, like our reading launch party that we're going to do later. So it's a pliable concept, but it's got a lot of structure to it, and that's your person. And so as you go, that's your person. And they then tell the story at board meetings, anecdotal stories about what's happening in your building. So it's only been positive. I can only say good things about that.
In our district, the committee would do presentations to the board as progress was being made. You know, each critical move the committee was making, they were doing presentations. So I probably a total of 3 presentations, I would guess. It wasn't like every month or at every meeting, but when there was some critical things to update, we had presentations at the board done by the committee.
I think in our district, just the way our systems and procedures are set up, the administrators don't do a lot of reporting directly to the board. That probably would be very beneficial, but more of the executive team. But I have to say that what's been awesome is we don't have board partners. I love that idea, but we have a couple people from, district office who come and do learning walks similar to your board partners, and then they get to take that information back to the board. But I have to say too that the school pace, the data collection has been phenomenal because not only as a leader, I can see all the data, but through their leadership, they can see the district data throughout. So what do we need to work on? Those types of things. So that school pace, quick and easy access data has been priceless.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Megan. Really important question around governance and keeping board members engaged. I want to throw out a sort of a 2-part question, and you answer whichever one you want to answer. You don't feel like you have to answer both. One actually comes from the chat, and someone's asking about customization. Someone mentioned customization. I remember the word. And so someone's saying, can you say a little more about that? So that's one part question. The other part question is what I'm describing as leadership moves, right? These are things only the principal can do to ensure the success of this program. You can choose either one of those. This is how we customize ARC and how ARC allows us to customize, Or you can say, you know what, I want to deal with the leadership moves. This is a critical thing for a principal to do when moving this work forward. Who wants to start? And choose either one, or you can.
I
Go
could
ahead.
jump in on the leadership moves if that's okay, real fast.
That's fine. Yeah.
Kind of passionate about this one. I think our educators all want to do great work and they're all committed to their practice. So my ache when we have something as monumentally new as this, because this is new, it's new from the assessment level to the instructional response level to everything about it, is I really think it's critical to, first of all, engage your school leadership team, agree to what is a consumable rate of adult learning, and commit to that and stay true to that, because this is a multi-year process before you can really scale best practice. And I think, and I really can't say it enough, success does not come. That key metrics dashboard is one of the most exceptional tools, but you aren't going to be able to draw conclusions in month 2. So a great hindrance to getting teachers to be the expert in their use of this and in their practice, and in being able to be effective in drawing conclusions and accurate inferences, is giving them time and space, making commitments with your leadership team to what we're doing in this first year, and staying true to those commitments, no matter how much that urge to do more, because there's so much more to this, comes upon you. So that was humbling for me, because I really like to do things quickly and efficiently, but that is not serving our educators well. So that would be my move, and only the principal really can do that. That's in your hands. And so we have to be true to our people.
You're spot on. Only the principal can bring that leadership team together to create some consensus around how we're going to move this forward. Thank you for that, Kristen. Who wants to go next?
I can add to what Kristen said. I think our district did a nice job of scheduling out ARC PD, specifically with our ARC representative and our district personnel. They were immersed in the learning, and our principals were immersed in the learning. I will say this. I was engaged because I really knew what was at stake. Coming from the background of a reading specialist, I really wanted it to work, and I knew that it was going to be a difficult change or shift in mindset for us, because we were moving from typical guided reading rotations to that one-on-one conference schedule. So I do think that you have to be engaged and you have to be timely. We meet every week at SSB, which is like a PLC, a professional learning community. In our district, it's called SSB, a school success block. And grade levels meet, and we plan out our sessions based on the need of where we're going. And a lot of times we planned it, and then what we noticed was there were problems of practice that we would identify and have to work through. And through the SSB came, okay, let's go through these walkthroughs and see what we can do to support one another. And it became a little bit more organic than what we had originally mapped out. We tried to map it all out. And then we found out that we have to kind of just go with the flow of ARC and go with each classroom. And what we noticed too was at a grade level, there was definitely always a common need, but then depending on readiness of teacher, there was different levels of PD that we really needed to provide. And our reading specialists at our school level worked together closely with our administrative team to ensure that we were giving the support to the teachers in maybe areas that they didn't feel quite confident in. Because we had started in 3 to 5, a lot of our 3 to 5 teachers felt really comfortable in comprehension instruction, but we were for the first time asking them to look at phonics instruction for kiddos in the classroom. So they needed support with that. They needed PD, they needed to understand the materials, and they needed to feel confident to be able to do that. So really being organic in the need and looking at the individual teachers, just like we're looking at the individual students, while mapping it out over time, like Kristen said, because you do have to have small goals that are achievable.
Yeah, for some leadership moves I would think about would be the first one, the big one, I think, is staying engaged in the process. I think as leaders, we get pulled in 1,500 directions, as teachers do in the classroom, right, with every kid. But sometimes it's hard to maintain that focus. And so some of the ways I try to maintain that focus is really celebrating successes with teachers. So looking at the data or I'm in the classrooms every day and seeing, if I see one thing, I might write a little note to that teacher or send an email just to, celebrate success. Like, wow, it's so exciting to see your kids, blah, 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 blah. And then the other thing is we have some days that are identified as building PD. And this kind of builds off of what some other people, I think Kristen was saying specifically, that on those building PD days, instead of doing more, it was more about time for them to look through their units, dive deep, collaborate. And, they were doing it together. What do our students need? And going from there.
I would second what everybody has said so far, but I cannot emphasize enough how robust the program is. And I think Kristen had mentioned it's the three legs of the table. There's curriculum, instruction, and assessment all wrapped up in one. And what I noticed is that each teacher has something they can gravitate to in this program, whether they're really focused on the writing or whether they're really focused on the assessment piece, or there's something for everyone. And we just made a commitment to let the teachers thrive in the components that they were comfortable in and not to really harp on the things that they weren't doing yet. That can be in the next year's implementation. And time, I think Fonda had mentioned giving them just time. You have like giving them planning time, giving them time with the PD coach, giving them input with their PD coach from ARC. It needs time, and you can't underscore that enough.
Yeah. What I'm hearing in a lot of your responses is actually an answer to this question around customization too, right? It's not like you get the program and you have to do it this way within this block of time. What you have to do is make sure that you implement it successfully at the pace that your community can take it so that you can go deep, right? So in some ways you go slow to go fast because you're going deep. And that probably leads to results. And so someone asked in the chat, and we can just segue to this question around results or assessment. First of all, how are you doing? I think maybe one or two you mentioned some results you're beginning to see. So how are you doing? And also, what do you like about the assessments? How do you think about the assessments? Talk a little bit about that because that's a part of the question. But maybe you can start with how are you doing? Go ahead, Barbara. Looks like you were going to jump.
Yeah, I was actually still thinking, but I think
Okay, sorry.
it's okay. I think this teachers know the students better than they ever have before because of the IRLA. I think that they understand how to meet their needs better than ever before. So of course, we're seeing the results. We're seeing kids move levels. We're seeing kids' excitement, engagement also help them to move levels, right? And I think when they're reading at that independent level, they're really practicing the skills and solidifying skills. So it happens rather quickly, especially in the primary grades, I've noticed. I think when we talk about assessments, we're so used to talking about like traditional assessments, and ARC is not that way. It's a little bit more organic. It takes a little while to get the feel of how to assess because you're making some judgments and you're making some calls that you've never made before. And because I was a reading specialist, I felt a little bit more confident in that. But the teachers that aren't are starting to become little mini reading specialists around the building. And it's pretty awesome. Some of our reading specialist questions to us was, well, they're doing a lot of what I do now. This is really amazing. How am I going to support that? So we had to even adjust that. But it definitely is a different type of assessment. It's individualized and it's much more accurate. And these are skills maybe that are these levels that we're talking about. I don't want to confuse anybody. We're not sticking a child in a level. We're saying this is where they need instruction and support. And this is where we can move them. And they might need a skill. And we have a range of reading around that skill to support that. So when I first heard about ARC, I did get confused by that. And I wanted to make sure I just wrap back around to that and shared that.
One of the things we've been looking at a lot is the growth that the school pace shows you. So, our students start here. How much have they actually grown? And we are seeing great results. We have several students and several grade levels who have lots of kids who are like a year's growth already, and the year isn't over. So that's really exciting to see the growth. And I think it's just a different way to look at the data, and it's so important. And that's something that we have celebrated over and over, is like even within a month to see how much the kids grew is pretty amazing.
I would add there's a joy our staff is finding in being able to better articulate why, not just what the reader level is, but why. So why are we still at this level? And they can strategically identify that. And I would also suggest, just kind of going back to that, moves that work is we focused a lot on early levels accuracy and ANEO, and ensuring that our staff had time to learn together. Because I agree, Barbara, you're right. There's a lot of professional interpretation. That's a celebration in ARC at every layer of the work the teacher does, but that's very uncomfortable. And so it's spending time on that level's accuracy so they can have shared learning around that and shared opportunity to evaluate what the evidence they've collected around a reader. It was a really powerful move in our building, and we've lived that all year. And there's a lot of celebrations that have come from that. So we believe our levels are accurate. Then we can infer what our growth looks like from there more accurately as well.
I think I second again what everybody said. The thing that I've learned the most from the program is how we articulate instruction to all providers that a student is working with. So we've always known that, say, a student with special needs has a special education teacher. They might see a reading teacher, and then they also see the classroom teacher. But before ARC, we were all working on what the student needed, but maybe not so succinctly. Now, our special education teacher, the reading teacher, and the classroom teacher all work on the exact same skill that has been identified as the child's power goal. And one day there's huge aha moment with our teachers, because one of the teachers says, but they don't even know their letters yet, and they don't know their letter sounds, and they're in first grade, and they need to know this. And so they're trying to pack in letter ID, letter sounds, and then they get to a power and then fit in the power goal. And from encouragement from our art coach, she said, stop. You have a power goal. Everybody focuses on the power goal. And never before has our providers been so clear on what a child is working on. And never before have our children been so clear on what they're working on. And even my special education teacher who works in KN1 said to me, I just can't believe how much I've learned from this. I'm even writing my IEPs differently. And I don't know I can't emphasize that enough, because we've all recognized that as a problem, right? We have children who see all these providers. The articulation of a child's skill and the target. We've always talked about targeted instruction, but now, like, we really are targeting instruction to certain skills that the child has been identified by a team that the child needs.
Wonderful. Love those anecdotes. Love those stories. So what's maybe two more questions before I turn it back over to Megan. What's the next level of work for each of you? Right. So things are going well. You're making progress. I'm sure you're still plugging away. But what's the next sort of challenge that you have to take on around this work, lest people think that we've arrived?
I think that one of our challenges right now is finding the balance between when do you push a child ahead in a level and when do you hold back? We want our children to have productive struggle, and we want them to be reading texts that are challenging for them. At the same time, we want them to be reading texts that they can read and feel comfortable at. Some children love being pushed and love getting up and going up a level, and they just embrace the challenge. And then we have other children who were recognizing that the push was too fast and that we need to dial it back. So right now in my K2, that would be our next move is to, one of the folks here mentioned teacher judgment. We have worked with a very prescriptive program for years, and now teachers are using their judgment. And with that, they are also building confidence in their skills, but we're doing it together. We are, I think Kristen mentioned the levels accuracy checks. It's a constant flow, give and take, and it's really trying to embrace that as a way of learning and not a judgment of, oh, I put the child in the wrong level. We're all just figuring this out together.
I think our challenge is going to be to keep going with the depth of learning for teachers. We are starting to explore the toolkits a little more deeply. And I think next year it'll be very exciting and interesting in the same that many of our students may come in proficient, where before we hardly ever had that. So it'll be interesting to see how we need to collaborate and move forward from there. And I think the other thing is we are still working on what Tina was saying, aligning and collaborating special ed, gen ed, all the players collaborating to help the student feel their goals are aligned.
I would say cohesion is our next step. So there's so much that we can learn about a reader and so much that we can learn about how that informs our practice. So we're working on creating a more cohesive way to connect all the dots about a reader and really do a PDSA model through the lens of, is my ERLA accurate? Is my power goal where it should be, on what it should be? Is my reading practice informing the growth or not that I'm seeing? What's my conferencing, coaching, and practice look like? Just to help create this connectivity between all of this information we have about the reader and finding where actionable steps can go to see better growth. So I think it's that. And to your point, Fonda, too, that cohesion team is right. And then moving everyone on the team forward around that plan. So that's where we need to go.
As I said earlier, we are very hopeful that we'll be adopting in K1. So I think ours is going to be the continuity of services and supporting I forgot to mention that our reading specialists and the primary grades have been working with the students that are not in the pilot, just on the one-on-one conferences and the 100-book challenge. And their growth has been phenomenal. So I think it's going to be a natural fit, but we're going to go through the same process we did with 3 to 5 all over again with K to 2. So I'm excited about it. And we know some of the hiccups that come along. So it's a challenge, but it's also a challenge we accept. I think another great thing that our district is doing is we're continuing with the leadership series with ARC. And that has been an amazing opportunity for us as leaders. People who were part of the original pilot feel, really validated and supported. And then people who are coming on board or other principals who are coming on board are really learning a lot from each other.
Wonderful. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues here in a second, but I want each principal, if you don't mind, to just finish this sentence for me. And I'm only going to give you about 10 seconds to come up with the answer. So for all of those who are on the call considering ARC, the sentence that I want you to finish is, you should seriously consider ARC because, so I'll give seconds to think of what's coming after that, because. Start with Fonda.
You should seriously consider ARC because it really changes the culture of your building and develops that love of reading, which is really what we're aiming for.
Okay, let's go to Kristen.
It creates equitable access for all of our learners, and it ensures that they have a path to success as readers.
Thank you. Tina?
You should really consider ARC because it develops, helps children develop into beautiful writers.
Thank you, Barbara.
You should really consider ARC because it will change the way your readers feel about themselves and the way your school community feels about literacy in general. I've never felt more passionate.
That note, I'll turn it over to my colleagues, Amelia, Megan. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, guys.
Megan, I don't know if you have any closing words.
I just want to thank you all. I think the way in which you brought us into your schools, from the student perspective, the teacher perspective, the parent perspective, and the community perspective, has been really enlightening. And I think the most powerful chat we've had. So thank you to all of the attendees as well. And we will make sure that if we didn't answer your question or get you a referral for middle school or high school, that we will follow up with you on that. So just wanted to thank our attendees as well as our panelists and Dr. Scott. Thank you. Amelia.
Thank you. I have goosebumps from head to toe. I was so moved by hearing you and just really thank you for being the leaders that we need you to be, because you have a huge impact on the trajectory of every life in your building. So my heart, my thoughts go out to you. It's just amazing. And please don't forget to join us next month. Teresa, what do we have coming up? There you go. We can continue this conversation. Literacy improvement in practice. We're going to be talking about the use of data to really drive improvement. So I hope you join us on Thursday, April 28th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. See you then.